Have you ever wondered what it would be like if wargaming took the design concept for the USS Florida and applied it to a slightly different hull and then placed it at a higher tier? Well, I have the answer for you today in the form of the Tier 10 Premium or Special American Battleship USS Rhode Island. This is, of course, World of Warships on the PC, and I am Xarkun, a community contributor for World of Warships Legends, the console cousin to this game. Rhode Island does not exist in Legends, so if we want to take a look at it, we're going to have to play World of Warships PC. I've got a good match for you in this ship today. It's going to end with a kraken, little spoiler alert there. And in fact, the fifth ship that we sink is going to be the most satisfying ship possible to sink. More on that later, but for now, as we push in toward the Alpha Cap, let's talk a little bit about the design of the Rhode Island. What you're looking at is more or less a Georgia hull with worse armor on the bow and stern. This thing has 27mm plating on both the bow and stern, so of course it can be overmatched by 406mm guns, which is quite a common caliber to see at these higher tiers. The belt armor is fine, it can certainly bounce things, but you'll see a little bit later on when we engage that North Carolina out there that he's going to do some pretty good damage even to our angled side. The guns here are 12 356mm guns set in 3 quadruple turrets, 2 on the front, 1 on the back, and the reload time on these guns, unlike the USS Florida, which I think has a 33-second reload, this reload is 22 seconds when you build into it. On top of that, the ship is a Georgia hull, so it's already fast to begin with, and it's got an engine boost that makes it even faster. You can achieve speeds well in excess of 40 knots with the engine boost active. You've also got the heel, which I believe is the same as the USS Ohio. It's got a short cooldown time, about 40 seconds or so it's always available when you need it. And on top of that, you've got radar, basically American cruiser radar. I believe it's got a range of 9 kilometers and a duration of about 40 seconds. So essentially what you have in the Rhode Island is more like a battle cruiser than a battleship. Sort of like a jumbo American radar cruiser, you might say. And the result is pretty good, although it does necessitate a lot of shell switching. You saw on our first salvo against, I believe, a Montana pretty far out there, we fired HE and got some good results. Against that North Carolina out there, we just shot him with some AP and did about 20,000 damage, but he's angling and kiting away, so we've switched to the HE. The damage numbers on the HE are not super impressive. I want to say it does about 5,000 damage or so with the HE, which is fine, and there are 12 shells. The fire chance is somewhere in the 36% range, but with a 22-second reload and all these shells, this thing is a very efficient fire starter. And the AP, even though it's smaller caliber and can't really overmatch anything at the tier, it does have good penetration, even at somewhat further distances, although on this shot against the slightly angled USS Montana, I don't know if most of these shells are going to miss or not, but the results are not going to be too spectacular. The AP is probably best against broadside cruisers. I think the lower caliber means you're less likely to see too many over-penetrations, and we should get a good demonstration of that. There are 2 cruisers hanging around this Alpha Cap, one of which is the Des Moines over there, who's sort of hiding behind the island, and we're not able to really hit him yet. There's also a Brindisi running around somewhere, and we'll run into him soon enough as well to demonstrate the efficacy of this AP. But basically, the playstyle here is much more battle cruiser than battleship. You certainly can't be too aggressive, especially not this early on in the match. There's no way we're going to be pushing into the Alpha Cap right now with a USS Black hanging around, 2 cruisers, and a battleship that can overmatch parts of our armor scheme. So instead, we're sort of hanging around here. We did notice that the North Carolina was coming this way, and it doesn't seem like sitting here is going to yield any good shots on the Des Moines, who's playing that island pretty hard. So we're going to try to come around this corner, maybe run into the North Carolina. Perhaps we'll get lucky and find the Brindisi or the USS Black in radar range. There's the Brindisi and the North Carolina. He's, of course, pushing in, which is going to put him at a little bit of a disadvantage. You probably don't want to be pushing into this thing's HE spam. There you see, what was that, 11,000 damage and 2 fires lit? Instantly, the North Carolina DCPs, so any fire we get next is going to be permanent and deal quite a bit of damage to him. For whatever reason, he decides not to shoot the rear turret at us. I guess it's going to be shot at the cruiser directly behind us, but that's fine. Gives us a little opportunity to turn away. I don't think we necessarily want to get closer to the thing because he can overmatch our bow. And even when we're angled like that, he's going to do fairly good damage. Plus, Brindisi's sap is going to do a number to our rather thin armor, especially on the stern. And we're going to end up taking a lot of damage here. We've already got the first heal going. As you can see, it's about to expire, and the cooldown time on that heal is just a little south of 40 seconds. It'll be online again soon enough. And the North Carolina continues to push in. You can see that when we're kiting away, we do have to give a fair amount of broadside to get all of the turrets on target, but that's okay. North Carolina is on a double fire again. The dispersion there on that salvo, not fantastic, although I will say the accuracy on this thing is pretty consistently good. In any case, there goes North Carolina for our first kill of the game. We're on pretty low HP, though, so we're going to have to disengage for a moment and deploy another repair party. Luckily, disengaging in this ship is very easy as well. We've got just north of 12 kilometers of detectability when we build into it with the concealment skill on the commander and, of course, the concealment module. 12.3 kilometers by sea. There's our first citadel of, I think, a 9 in this game, by the way, against the Brindisi. As you can see, the alpha strike on the AP shells individually is not all that impressive. Only 9,500, but that's down to the smaller gun size. And remember, you have 12 of them, so if you land a couple more shells, it can be pretty devastating damage to the cruisers. But anyway, with this really good concealment and this ridiculous speed, thanks to the engine boost, you can see we're going over 40 knots now. It's very easy to reposition in this ship and take engagements from more favorable angles. Of course, you take a lot of damage due to the lack of armor, but, you can run away, heal up pretty quickly, and then push back in for another round. We're going to try to re-engage the Des Moines, who continues to occupy this corner of the island. And as you can see here, things are not especially going well for our team. The enemy team is far ahead of us on points by just about 200. Ship count is more or less even, but we've lost one more ship than the Reds. So this, so far, is looking like a bit of an uphill battle. We catch sight of the USS Black and really flub the shot there. I don't think any of those shells are going to hit. That's okay, though. Look how fast this reload is, too, with the Adrenaline Rush skill, by the way. Adrenaline Rush, of course, reduces the armament reload time by something like 0.2% for every 1% of HP you lose. And we've lost more than 50% HP, so... yeah, fast reload time. There's some more citadels against the Brindisi. He goes down for our second kill of the game, and a devastating strike medal. One of many medals that we're going to earn in this game. And speaking of which, you might have noticed the shell tracers on this thing are red. That's because we're using unique American commander William Halsey, who has a unique skill that triggers if you get the Confederate medal. It gives you 10% bonus to reload time, and we are going to trigger the Confederate medal, but not until a little bit later. Around the corner is the Des Moines. We shoot at him with the AP. He misses most of the damage there, but he's going to turn the other cheek and expose his broadside, so here's an opportunity for our third kill of the game and potentially a second dev strike. Well, it wasn't a dev strike, but it was 3 citadels, and it was the third kill of the game. We're up to 165,000 damage done now, and the alpha cap is basically entirely clear. I suppose we could sail into it and capture it, but this is still an uphill battle for our team. We have this gearing here in the Bravo cap, who I think has been sitting in there the entirety of this match and preventing the enemy team from accruing any points on it. For some reason, I thought I saw earlier somebody announce his position to the Reds in the game chat, which is a terrible thing to do, by the way. No matter how frustrated you might be with your teammates, I'd say this gearing is doing a pretty good job in preventing the enemy team from acquiring any points from this cap. And even though he's got almost no HP, he is being useful to the team, probably more useful than whoever called out his position to the Reds, because I assume they sunk. In any case, we've now gone ahead of the enemy team in ship sunk, and we're approaching the Bravo cap, which, as you can see, the gearing is not making any progress toward capturing. That means the cap is also occupied by an enemy destroyer. And we have radar. In fact, our radar range is very close to covering the entirety of the cap, so I think we're going to end up deploying it for the first time in this battle. We're a little bit too far away, though, from the destroyer, so we've got to approach the cap a little bit more, wasting probably the first 10 seconds of this radar duration, but after a moment, we're going to pick up the location of the enemy destroyer. There it is. It's a Holland. He's on pretty low health. And, well, being a Georgia hull, the Rhode Island does have secondaries. I think they're the same secondaries as you would find on things like the Massachusetts and the Rhode Island. The Ohio. You can see there the secondaries are good enough to take out the Holland and deliver us our 4th kill, as well as the Close Quarters Expert medal. We're going to have to dodge these torpedoes here. You certainly don't want to be taking any torpedoes in this ship. They do hurt pretty bad. As you can see, that was quite a lot of damage, and we're going to have to deploy the DCP, but we're still alive, and there's only 2 ships left in this game. The Atatara over there, who is flat broadside to us, and the enemy aircraft carrier. When battleships are flat broadside to you, this AP really slaps them. This is a lot of guns, of course, 21,000 damage there, and I think I forgot to mention, the AP on these guns actually does have slightly improved penetration angles. I don't think they're like Des Moines level penetration angles, but they are improved, and against broadsides, even broadside battleships, they do good damage. There's our high caliber medal, and we've crossed the 200,000 damage mark. That Atatara was on full health, I think, when we started this engagement, and he isn't anymore. Unfortunately, he's going to take himself behind the island there, so we are not going to be able to secure our kraken by sinking him. Looks like he's actually going to go down to the torpedoes of that gearing, who is still alive and has managed to achieve his goal in this match, taking the Bravo cap. I'd say GG to this guy. Much more useful to have a destroyer live the whole time and survive to take the cap than sink within the first 5 minutes. In any case, the enemy CV is the only thing left. He was last spotted near the back of the map, and he's traveling toward that island there, so we're going to have to deploy the speed boost. It'd be nice if we were going at full throttle, but for whatever reason I haven't noticed that yet, and we're only going at 3/4 throttle. We're going to try and catch up to that CV and sink him for the final kill of the game. I think, though, as far as the Rhode Island goes, and the close quarters expert notwithstanding, you probably don't want to build into secondaries on this thing. I certainly am not fully spec'd into that, although I think I might have the secondary mod active. That right there is probably enough. But the playstyle of this ship is much more like a cruiser playstyle. You could see us moving around the map, kiting, just trying to deal a bunch of damage with our ridiculous reload time. That reload time is about to get even more ridiculous, by the way, as we approach the enemy CV, the Tier 10 USS Midway. He's got himself behind the island right now, but as you can see, he's traveling towards sort of the right of the screen. And if he continues forward enough, he's going to expose his broadside to us from behind that island. And it just so happens that we are about to be in the perfect position to take advantage of that. Our teammates are sailing, I guess, toward the other end of the island. It looks like the friendly Iwami has turned to head in the direction of the CV, but that might just be to try to dodge the torpedoes. The CV is trying to sink the Iwami, but he's come out from behind the island and he's exposing broadside to us. So there's another Citadel and the Confederate medal, which triggers Halsey's unique skill and reduces our reload time to something absurd, 15 seconds. We started with 22, and between Adrenaline Rush and the Halsey skill, we're down to 15. There are cruisers in this game with reload times that short, and this is a battleship with 12 guns. It's honestly a little bit ridiculous. The lack of armor notwithstanding, and yeah, I mean, there's our Kraken, the most satisfying possible Kraken you can get by sinking the enemy CV at the end of the game. 260,000 damage done, or near enough. And a lot of medals: Confederate, high caliber, close quarters expert, devastating strike, just every medal you could possibly imagine, and 2,400 base XP. Pretty good result in this thing, because I think, honestly, it's an excellent ship. Frankly, it's a bit of a menace to try to deal with, especially if it's playing against you at range and using the HE. Kind of difficult to kill, because it can just go dark, run away, and deploy its quick reloading heal. But a really, really excellent ship, one of my favorite to play on World of Warships PC, and something I hope to see in Legends sometime in the future. Hope you enjoyed this video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.